Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Cameron Holt, the president of Exiger Government Solutions. Good to have you with us.
Thanks, Tom. It's good to be here.
And a lot of things are converging. We've got the adoption of cloud computing. We've got the adoption of software as a service kind of connected to cloud computing. And then there's the whole issue, which is really the topic on the top of so many federal minds, of supply chain risk management.
Right.
Connect those three things for us.
Yeah, so it's really fascinating. I would say that one really enables the other. The advent of cloud computing has been obviously widely accepted in the government, and it's gaining more acceptance, and it really makes a lot of sense. So from a supply chain risk management perspective, and really more importantly from a software as a service company perspective, the advent and exploitation of cloud computing really allows us to really focus our investment and energies on delivering really deep and rich and wide supply chain risk management solutions, rather than having to concentrate on the infrastructure and the platforms and all that goes into the server farms and things like that. So it allows software as a service companies to really deliver cutting edge technology all the time in a very focused way, which is what Exiger has done with supply chain risk management.
And to really get a handle on risk management, you need a lot of data. And of course, now artificial intelligence is increasingly, behind people's use of data. So
Right.
Maybe describe for us how cloud AI can bring together what's needed for some good analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I kind of laugh sometimes. Exiger was doing artificial intelligence before artificial intelligence was cool. And now you see an explosion of artificial intelligence. But what Exiger really concentrates on is consuming massive amounts of data worldwide, both open source and very customized sources of data, to include data from our clients. And we have some very sophisticated AI models that allow us to consume that data and then triangulate it and make sense of it for the user, so that when we present it to our user, we've filtered out a whole lot of noise and enabled that supply chain risk manager to really understand what risks they need to pay attention to and which risks are actionable. And we do that in a way that we look at, of course, our flagship product was DDIQ, all the way back to the days of the HSBC banking nightmare of money laundering for Mexican cartels, all the way to present, where Exiger was a major player in supporting the pandemic relief effort. And really supporting the whole DoD in making sure that no shell companies popped up looking for some of that CARES Act money. And so DDIQ really allows that one button push entity level risk illumination. And so if you could imagine just putting in somebody's name or putting in a company name, and one button push away from a wealth of information about the risk that represents.
Or even if it's an actual company in the first place.
Absolutely, exactly right. When I was in the Air Force leading the task force in the pandemic relief effort, that came in very handy, and I'm happy to tell you we reshored all the medical manufacturing capability in a very rapid fashion that was necessary. And with Exiger's help, we did not award a single bad contract out of hundreds of contracts awarded, some of them quite large. But beyond the DDIQ product, Exiger really has, as a result of what I explained with SaaS and being able to really focus in, we want to be that leading supply chain risk management solution. So we cover all 12 risk categories across the taxonomy, over 100 different subcategories of risk. And recently we bought 2 other companies that allowed us to have item level exposure and software level illumination. So Supply Dynamics and Ion Channel, respectively. And so now, not only can you do automated due diligence, but you can look at the item level and say that part is at that location. And then when you get to the software, that part is just magic. You can see where the software came from in its various pieces and do the elimination of software bills of material, which is becoming increasingly important. And then the last piece I'll mention is something we call bibliometrics, which is really tracking intellectual property movement around the planet. And that becomes really important for our universities and for understanding adversaries that would steal our intellectual property and understanding the flow of that.
All right, and what you say then suggests that there are other areas that are peripheral or touching on, but outside of supply chain management, that are also good candidates for this cloud AI model to deliver on.
Yes, in fact, you know, supply chain risk management and all kinds of software as a service type delivery models, that enables that. I would tell you that candidly, the government is a little bit gun shy with software as a service because it's a very new business model for them. You know, there are a lot of people think that you should just get a little software disk and then that's it. But actually, for supply chain risk management, it's more beneficial to understand it all the time and have it continuously monitored with the best AI out there. But beyond supply chain risk management, as I look towards what the DoD really must do to keep out in front of our adversaries, there's many other uses. One would be digital twinning and digital engineering. And so instead of the days when we had to fly, fix, fly, and through trial and error, develop a weapon system through design iterations that are very lengthy and time-consuming and expensive, now we have the opportunity, just like the F1 racing series, they do this amazingly well, where you can model in a digital environment that weapon system, and you can do literally thousands of design iterations with the entire supply chain in a government reference architecture and understand how your changes are going to show up on the manufacturing line and what it's going to mean even in the operational environment. So that's one. Another is wargaming. Increasingly, as we face very sophisticated adversaries around the world, we need to understand which capabilities should we invest in that really move the needle in return on investment versus adversary capabilities. And that is enabled big time through cloud computing and software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. It really allows us to reduce the redundant costs that are out there and really focus in on exquisite capability. And then another idea for pulling in non-traditional vendors and also private sources of capital into the defense space is something I like to call practice fields, where you can have venture capital firms that actually have physical locations that are cleared facilities for defense contractors, large and small, and also non-traditional contractors to come into to design their own products and defense products using the tool sets for digital engineering and digital twinning, and it allows for a much greater potential competitive marketplace. So there's really unlimited uses, and that's one of the reasons why Exiger took the early step to get FedRAMP certified. And I believe we're the only SCRM solution that is FedRAMP certified, because we know how sensitive that data is on the back end when we expose it.
And real quickly, do you find that in dealing with federal agencies that their budgets are aligned with what their goals are in supply chain risk management?
Yeah, unfortunately not. You know, I would love to tell you that we were like cloud computing, where there's billions and billions of dollars being invested in it, as there is in cloud computing right now. But what I would tell you right now, we're so early in the SaaS business model on the government side, and in particular in supply chain risk management. So it's a very new area, but very quickly I would tell you that it's going to become something like when you buy a house. We've always known that if you buy a house, you need water and you need electricity. But all of a sudden, I don't know where it happened to us, we realized that another utility you need is the internet. And I think you're going to find out that the same is going to happen with supply chain risk management. If you have any critical infrastructure, commercial or military, any nuclear infrastructure, any communications infrastructure, weapon systems, you have to have a very robust supply chain risk management solution to go with that. And so the funding right now, I would say, is way too diffuse and too little to really focus our energies. In fact, right now, their government is struggling with the question of, well, what should the government be doing versus the private sector when it comes to supply chain risk management? And of course, we believe that the optimal mix of that is for the government not to try to reinvest or duplicate the cost of hundreds of millions of dollars that have gone into these sophisticated AI solutions, and rather allow the private sector to do the shakeout over time. Who will be the best athletes? And the best athletes over time, the government should take advantage of that investment and not try to duplicate it. And I think once we get beyond that question, there's going to be a lot more focused investment from the government in important areas, not just supply chain risk management, but in areas that don't exist today, like funds to actually mitigate those risks. If you find out that there's a sole source and it's a Chinese supplier that is a problem, and it's the only source in the world that creates it, you can sure get a waiver and then approve a waiver every year, but it would be much more focused in supply chain risk management if there were a fund that DoD could then use to prioritize second source development, substitute product qualifications, and then use a Defense Production Act Title III money better than it's using it now in a very focused way towards those areas that our adversaries trying to corner the market on, like rare earth materials and microelectronics and several other big problems that no one program can take care of on their own.
And any final advice for agencies just to make sure they stay on top of supply chain risk, cybersecurity, and related complex?
Yes, in fact, what I would say is because it's such a nascent industry, there's a lot of different players getting into it, because I think everybody realizes that there is going to be a very big need for this, and this market is going to expand rapidly. And only the best athletes will expand their market share within this market. So what we have to avoid is this tendency towards saying you've got a supply chain risk management solution, but going cheap and going not very capable. And why would you do that? Well, in some cases, there's great risks associated with even knowing what problems you have in your supply chain. And so we would like to see us align incentives between the private sector and the government to remove all the disadvantages of going deep and cooperating throughout the supply chain, particularly for national security, so that we're cooperating to find where our adversary is in that and where all the fragilities are, that if we were, God forbid, to have another pandemic or even a war, that we would understand how to make the supply chain less fragile.
Some great insight. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom.
Cameron Holt is the president of Exiger Government Solutions. I'm Federal Drive host Tom Temin. You're watching Federal News Network. Let's go back to the studio now for more on the DoD Cloud Exchange.